From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hi, it's Charlie Matos, and in this episode, we sit down with the great singer-songwriter Darrell Scott. He joined us via a Zoom chat from his farm on the Cumberland Plateau, and a new record. Darrell Scott sings the blues of Hank Williams. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with Darrell Scott.
Darrell Scott, what would Hank Williams say if he were here right now on WSM Radio, where he held sway on the Mother's Best early morning radio show, where we sit this morning, not in this particular studio, but on this frequency, about your performance of Fool About You from your new tribute album, if you will, to the blues of Hank Williams?
I think he would say, I don't think Hank done it this way.
I could have had an organ, but I just chose not to use it. That's all. That's probably one of the things.
Well, you set me up there, Cody, because you set me up with the good line. Thank you.
Well,
you're doing Charlie's part.
Yeah, the Zoom interview that you were a part of this morning finds you quarantined at home. Is that where you are?
Yeah, I'm quarantined at my farm, which is 2 hours east of Nashville, on the Cumberland Plateau. And, you know, I find that being quarantined here is a pretty good place to be quarantined.
Where would you have been had COVID-19 and quarantine not come into all our lives? Would you be out touring in support of this album? Yeah,
I would have been at Merlefest last week, was going to be the release date. Savannah Music Festival. Oh, my gosh, on and on. I had 85 shows lined up this year.
I know how creative you are and how your mind works as a writer. So at what point did you say, okay, little break from Darrell Scott. I've always wanted to do this Hank Williams project, and so now's the time. When did that idea come to you, Darrell?
Well, believe it or not, I've got 4 albums floating right now, 3 originals, and then this Hank record. And then when I had to decide sort of last fall, like, well, which of these 4 are going to go out first? It seemed like the Hank was the way to go. It was also the one closest to done. It was basically done. And it was like, well, there we go. We'll just go the path of least resistance. Plus, I love Hank Williams. I always have. And I just wanted to throw a different take at Hank.
How did you determine what your set list was going to be from this vast catalog that is the Hank Williams collection?
Yeah, the common thread was trying to find the blues thread to Hank. And so by blues, I mean my version of blues, you know, which is a B3 organ player like Reese Winans on this thing, me plugging into a ratty amp on electric guitar, funky drums like Garbage Cans, Marco Giovino, and then finishing it off with an English upright bass player named Danny Thompson. So if it had sort of a funk blues factor to it, and I could twist the Hank toward the blues of that was my idea.
So what guitar, for the gearheads who are watching and listening this morning, did you use on Fool About You?
Yeah, that is a White Falcon Gretsch. And it's just into an amp so bad that we had to keep a fire extinguisher right next to it. You know, because it would whistle and hum and sometimes just cut out. But I took it into the shop over at Carter Music to see if they would kind of tweak it. They looked at it and really kind of refused to work on it because it's so, you know, you touch the wrong wire, you're going to have a problem.
Well, I'm familiar with the guitar, the Gretsch Falcon, the white one you described, because of the Randy Bachman exhibit, the long-running Gretsch exhibit at the Country Music Hall of Fame a few years ago, when that vast collection of his Gretsch guitars was on display there.
I would think when you delve into the catalog, I mean, there's the few that everybody knows every word to by heart, but there's a lot of desperation in a lot of those lyrics, isn't there, Darrell?
Yeah, a lot of blues are sitting right in there. Just So blues to me is a couple of things, if not more. Part of it is a style of playing, or as a singer, bluesing up a note, flat threes, flat sevens for all you Nashville number system folks. Throwing in three minor chords, all that kind of regular stuff. But there's also the blues of just heartache and break, and you almost feel better because you've thrown out the blues. It almost makes you feel better. At least I can sing about it. I didn't solve my blues, you might say, but at least I can sing and play about it. So, and Hank has that. I mean, Hank had titles like Honky Tonk Blues, Lovesick Blues, Long Gone Lonesome Blues. So there were tons of songs that already, of course, have the word blues sitting in there. But I wanted to sort of bring a more electric blues sound to some of this,
I think if he were here, he would be absolutely thrilled with what you have done with these songs, and would have done the same thing if he were around and technology. He had grown up with the technology that we have grown up with. I think about your late father, and speaking of the blues, I know it makes you blue when you think about his memory, but you would have learned these songs, I got to believe, playing in your daddy's band in the early days, right?
Absolutely then, but even before. So imagine just almost in the crib. It took years for me to be able to play, and me and my brothers, but my dad was playing Hank Williams in the house. In terms of the record player, we had a family PA. He'd put a microphone on the stereo speaker, and it would be like concert level volume in the house to wake us up on Sunday mornings, And so, yes, I know the Hank catalog, not just the hits, of course, but I know a lot of the Hank stuff just because my dad really tried to sing like Hank, and he tried to write like Hank. And of course, when he had his sons, we were to play like, the Driftin' Cowboys type of thing. Of course, we couldn't, but Hank has always just been there. It's almost the equivalent would be like some folks would have Christmas songs that they just know by heart. You never exactly remember learning them. They're just there. And a lot of the Hank songs are that for me.
See, I think if you'd had Don Helms, you guys probably could have pulled off the Hank Williams sound. That was probably the only thing you were missing was Don Helms on steel guitar.
I know. Don was the cat.
He did have, like Willie Nelson's guitar, the Don Helms steel guitar had its own place in music history, did it not?
Absolutely. And is that down at the Country Music Hall of Fame?
Yes, I believe it is. And I remember sitting in the rotunda at the Hall of Fame under the replica of the WSM Tower with Don Helms doing a GAC Masters Series show and him playing. And you talk about a moment when time stood still. It did for me that day. Darrell Scott, who just joined us. Darrell on his farm over on the plateau, as we refer to it here in Middle Tennessee. As you watch all over the world, you can tell it is springtime with those trees so green in the background this morning. And we had some wicked weather move through this part of the country overnight last night. A lot of people in metropolitan Nashville and beyond are still without power, and it could have happened where you're watching. There's more with Darrell Scott and the blues of Hank Williams coming up.
Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM.
Well, I certainly hope it's as sunny and green where you are as where we are in Middle Tennessee. Darrell Scott guesting on Coffee, Country, and Cody. With Darrell Scott sings the blues of Hank Williams. Darrell Scott, music, spirit, soul. This music and everything Darrell has available at darrellscott.com.
The ceremony was over. The lad stood alone in tears, for he had just said goodbye to the one he had loved through the years.
The blues of Hank Williams. Darrell Scott sings the blues. But Darrell, I've referenced your late father Wayne a little bit earlier. When did he record that? Where did you get that particular performance of When God Comes and Gathers His Jewels with your daddy on there?
Yeah, I went up there with an engineer and Danny Thompson, the upright bass player I was telling you about from London, England, up to Kentucky to Scott Holler where my dad lived, and we recorded that in his kitchen. And so, and we recorded, a few other things, 3 or 4 things. But that one, when I realized I was working on a Hank record, it was like, I know what the centerpiece is. It's my dad, because that's where I got my Hank. And what I love about that take, of course, it's a great, song about losing your mother, which is, how much more blues can you get in a particular way? But on the last verse there, where my dad speaks, I asked my dad on the next take, hey, Dad, if you would you recall the day your mom died, and would you just say something while we play the chords of the song there? So he ad-libbed what we just heard there. And I was just so proud of him. First of all, that's a pretty hard thing for a country boy to talk about, is the loss, the loss of your mom, and talking about that very day. And then to just put it in such an artful way in the middle of a Hank Williams song, When God Comes to Gather His Jewels, I couldn't be more proud than what I am about that track and my dad doing that.
Having spent my formative years in Kentucky as the son of a Southern Baptist minister, so when my mom would work all night and sleep during the day, I'd go with my dad. So I have attended my share of funerals with no connection to the person that is dead at all. But as I hear him speak and that Kentucky on his tongue, it is so reminiscent of the men I knew in my dad's churches, those little rural, not even in town. They were community churches for farm folks out the middle of a crossroads, perhaps, in farm country. And you know very well of which you said Scott Holler. So your family, obviously, this is immigrant. This is stuff of immigrant status we're talking about here, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's the holler that my dad was born in, and the holler that his mother died in, and that's where we went up there to record this. My dad built a little house, right there in Scott Holler to finish out his days. It was one of those things where he couldn't wait to leave at 17, and then spends the next 40 some years, California and Indiana and whatever. And right back into the holler that he was literally born in.
John,
and he's
Bryan,
got
I'm sorry, I clipped you there.
He's got that Kentucky tongue that you talk about, and it's sitting right there in that recording.
I think about the late John Bryan, who said, his parents left, his grandparents, famous in western Kentucky, in Paradise. Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County? All that is true. And John said the funniest thing said, my daddy went to Chicago for a better life and to get steady work, and he rented a house his entire life because he just knew at any given moment in time he was going to pack it all up and they were going to move back to Kentucky. And it never happened. But there was just that thought of one day, I'm going back to Paradise.
Yeah, that's right. So no need to make roots up in Chicago because we're going back as soon as possible.
And I think he said they rented for something like 37, 39 years or something crazy like that. So tell me about this other music from Darrell Scott. You said you had 2 or 3 other albums in the works that aren't this Hank Williams project. This just happened to be the one that was closest to being finished. Tell me about what's coming from Darrell Scott the next time we sit down and talk about music.
Well, I got a bluegrass band album. So I chose, tunes that could handle a grass situation. And we cut that out in Colorado. We were out on the road doing some bluegrass band gigs. And I thought, why send the guys home and the gals home in between weekend gigs? Let's just spend the week in a studio in Boulder, Colorado. So I cut a bluegrass record there. I've got a more rockin' record that I cut in Atlanta that's pretty strong on the rockin' end of things. And then I've got a nice, simple, almost folk live show, a nice, simple show I did in northern Colorado that's, doing some Merle Haggard songs, some of my own, and Mickey Newberry. And it just sounds really relaxed. So 4 different, they couldn't be more different. And that's why I thought the Hank, that's my roots. My dad's in there. Let's start there for this four record run.
Darrell Scott from his home on the Cumberland Plateau in East Tennessee. The new album, Darrell Scott Sings the Blues of Hank Williams. I'm going to close with a little clip of Men with Broken Hearts here. Darrell, treasure your friendship. Thanks for joining us this morning and doing a Zoom interview with us.
You guys are the best. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And please bring Charlie Mattos's preserves when you come, okay? Driving me crazy.
Will do.
You have no right to be the judge, to criticize and condemn. Just think, but for the grace of God, it would be you instead of him. One careless step, a thoughtless deed, and then the misery starts. And to those who weep, death comes cheap. These men with broken hearts. Humble you should be.
The spoken word of the lyrics originally written kind of makes you wonder if he wrote it with a pen or a pencil so he could erase and correct mistakes. But that would have been the music of Hank Williams, Men with Broken Hearts. It's on Darrell Scott Sings the Blues of Hank Williams from 6:50 a.m. WSM.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tinnell. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Mattos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.